Are you ready to explore the unknown? Dive into the world of the strange, mysterious, and unexplained with Eerie Expeditions magazine. Each issue is packed with spine-tingling tales, cutting-edge paranormal investigations, and exclusive insights into hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and more. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or just love a good ghost story, Eerie Expeditions magazine has something for you. Join our growing community of truth seekers and adventure lovers. Subscribe today at EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com and unlock the secrets of the supernatural. Are you ready? That's EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com, where the extraordinary is just a click away. Dare to discover.
Welcome to The Gateway, broadcasting live from the edge of the Mojave, where the strange slips through the cracks. We are live on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas. Tonight we're joined by demonologist Nathaniel Gillis, but before we get into that, I have a couple of things I need to cover. You've been listening to Into the Night with Sean Kelly with a discussion on the haunted corn maze. He had a guy on that owns a haunted corn maze up around the Pittsburgh area. If you missed him, check it out on Sundays as well. He's on at 5 p.m. Pacific. I think I'm joining him in a couple of weeks. I've had to take some time off. I'll get to that in just a minute. But if you're up to his show, tune in. It's on Sundays. It's currently 84 degrees here in the Mojave. This past week, you've been missed. I kind of missed a couple shows and been out of pocket. I haven't really responded to anybody. I'm very behind on a whole lot of things. I had to take a quick break. For many of you that follow me, you know of my beloved golden retriever, Reese. She crossed over the Rainbow Bridge last Tuesday, and I have just taken it so hard. Losing a pet is pretty hard, but Reese has been with me for 13 years, and she was my little sidekick. This golden retriever has done a lot more in life than a lot of humans have. She's been on pretty much every desert adventure with me. We've been camping together. She's swam in every single ocean. We've even hiked a couple mountains. She's hiked up Pikes Peak. She's hiked up Mount LeConte. I'm getting choked up talking about her. She's been to Key West. She's been everywhere. So it's almost like losing a kid. It's really hard, but I'm getting through it. And so is my cat, my surviving cat, Loki. He's getting through it too, but it's been a tough week. So I've been following the AI intently as scientists are using AI for different things. And one of those being bringing back voices of the dead. So recently, researchers have recreated an ancient Egyptian mummy's voice. It's the voice of a priest, Naseam. I'm probably saying his name wrong, but he's an Egyptian priest who would sing hymns at a temple in Thebes more than 3,000 years ago. And how did they do this? They produced a 3D printed voice box based on his vocal track, which was scanned to establish its precise dimensions. And then they used a vocal track with an artificial larynx sound. They synthesized a vowel sound meant to be similar to the voice of this priest. But can we take it a step further and call forth his spirit? It's an interesting concept, and people are discussing this, bringing forth demons and all kinds of sorts of things. So on loose reports, I'm not sure I haven't found a lot of evidence of just yet, but this is the reports that I found on the internet of people using AI to collect ancient rituals and other things to summon up demons and spirits and things of like darker magic. But there are also stories circulating the internet of spirits, whether demonic, cryptoid, or other, manifesting themselves all over the net. One such entity is named Loeb. I found her across several different stories now. She's described as the first AI generated cryptid because of how persistently and consistently her image appears in AI generated art, and nobody really knows why. It's interesting. So tonight we get into our topic. We're joined by demonologist Nathaniel Gillis, and he will share his insight on summoning demons through AI. Nathaniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you.
So tell me a little bit about you and your background before we get into this topic.
Yeah, so I am known as a demonologist in the field, although my research currently is kind of stretching those boundaries and entering into ufology and basically quantum physics. But my background in this field began as an experiencer when I encountered an entity in a haunted house I grew up in. And it was a full-bodied apparition of a little girl. And then that was at the actual open house, mind you. We haven't even moved in yet. But once we did move into the house, whatever that was turned out not to be a little girl. It was something more malevolent. And even more than an entity, more than a being, what I encountered was some kind of program that had weaponized that imagery to manipulate me as a child. So that's what kind of got me into this field. But the deeper I got into it, the more I realized I'm not studying demons at all. Right? What is this? Sometimes I wish it was demonic. People are going to crucify me for that because, I have a lot of people who say, well, Nathaniel, people need to understand my position that just because it's not demonic in form doesn't mean it's not demonic in function. So we have to make that distinction, right, before we go anywhere. But that was really my introduction to this intelligence that we're all fascinated and intrigued with. But whatever this is, my research has led me to believe that a lot of these entities are byproducts or emanations of some kind of program that reacts to consciousness and our involvement with it. And so that's what really got me so fascinated about artificial intelligence and the implications for our species. And so that's why I'm glad to be with you tonight. But, before we even get started with this, people need to understand that there is a learning matrix behind the phenomenon. And that many times when we interface with it, we're communicating with it, or we're trying to seek it out, we become co-creators, not of the experience, but of the actual mask the phenomenon will wear. And that's why a lot of times in incubi literature, it's the husband that manifests to the wife, or it's the deceased boyfriend, or in abductions, right? It's almost like culturally defined. It's the phenomenon bleeding in to the co-creation of the experience. And a lot of people, at least in the field, they get in trouble with this kind of research because, and I've heard people do this a lot, where they'll say, well, that means that you as an experiencer are responsible for what you've experienced. They get in trouble quickly, my friend, because then it's like, well, wait a minute, what if they did really bad things to me? Am I supposed to see how stupid it is? Sorry, guys. It really is. It's like, well, I'm not responsible for that. Well, no, you get what you put into it. And it's no.
But you're absolutely right. The old saying of what you go seeking, you're going to find is kind of true in a lot of ways.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And what we're seeing in the field, at least, is that while we may be co-creators of the manifestation, it's the horns and hooves. That's just the material, like that's just the imagery, the content behind it, their goals, the intention of the phenomenon is completely independent of us. And again, it's difficult sometimes to articulate that because people in the field are like, no, you're responsible for what you get out of it. And that's not true. What we're dealing with again is some kind of independent intelligence that plays into roles. It's horns and hooves until it no longer wants to be. And then we're looking at something that transcends our microcosm. We're going, oh crap, what are you? And that's really where I'm at with all of this. And another thing that people need to realize, and it's so funny because here lately I've been doing a lot of shows and I'm getting a lot more data, a lot of people that are like, "Hey, let's hop on a Zoom call." And so it's been really cool because now I don't have to talk the whole time, right? I'm just sitting there like, okay, let me listen. And I was on with an ecologist, and he has his PhD, and he's wanting to talk about what's called aggressive and parasitic mimicry regarding the phenomenon. And I'm like, oh, this is intriguing. Like, what's all this about? And so once we got into it, he goes, I study life forms in the ocean, and there are different stages of pathology that these entities use and engage in. And so then he's like, but there are entities in the ocean that are predatory. And one of the ways that they blend into their environment is by mimicking other species. And then you start to see that the mimicry itself is not just an ability to blend in, or it's not just a way to survive to where it's just hiding in the background. No, it's doing that so that it can predate. It can go and become a predator or a parasite on the exact species it's wanting to appear as. And so it's not a survival mechanism per se. It's a predatory artifact. And so once we got into that conversation, my mind is just being blown. And that's when he was like, Nathaniel, if we're looking at the way the phenomenon reflects us, in many cases, it's only doing that to bypass our senses, our instincts, our walls of defense. And then at the time of its choosing, that co-created archetype that it's interfacing as dissolves. And now we start to realize, like, yeah, okay, why is that aliens putting sigils on bodies? Or why is that not really my husband or my dear Aunt Edna? And so what I want to open the show up today with is, right, like whatever we're dealing with has a desire, a manifest desire to mimic our species. And even in parapsychology, we've known, like even like with respect to orbs, balls of light, my good friend Steve Marion Barry Fitzgerald discovered one of this kind of research where they were doing EVP work. And what they found out was that right before they would have an EVP, they would see a ball of light come over the recorder. The ball of light was transplanting auditory mimicry upon their techno. It's fascinating. And then they would go and look back at it and they would say, doesn't really seem like it's human. It was something that wanted to appear as human. It wanted to sound human, would blend into the reality. I'm just a ghost. I'm haunting the house, or I'm haunting the individual that's living in it. And then what they started doing, of course, because Steve Mera has an advanced degree in acoustics and audio, it started looking and comparing, like, okay, if you and I were to speak in that recorder, they compared that recording to what they were capturing for the EVPs, there were completely different signatures. So they realized that this was not a real human being speaking. It was something, a species that wanted to sound like a human, just enough to get us to engage with it. So that we'll go tell somebody, oh yeah, that's a ghosty, or that's some kind of, right, that's discarnate consciousness. And so my point, before we even get into the data here, is that we need to understand, first of all, the phenomenon loves to mimic our species. It does it often. It's fascinating, isn't it? Fascinating.
And the more you read about this stuff that's happening with AI too, and then aligning it with what you're saying, it seems like there's a possibility for a whole lot of things to happen with this.
Of course. Right, of course, because, and this gets into what's called technomancy and tulpamancy, where there are individuals in the field, and I've had some cases, maybe two in my career like this, where a thought form that is preconscious will form a thought, and that thought will form an entity. So in the field, we've had specifically is one experiment called the Philip experiment, where, oh God, yeah, uh-oh, I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. No, right? Just yeah. So the Philip experiment is fascinating because you start to see the pathology of the phenomenon. Again, we're baiting the phenomenon, right? And you'll see how the phenomenon's willing, like sometimes to bypass, like, just all of its instincts itself. It's like, oh, of course I'll become that. Of course I will. I'll become that archetype for you. Thank you for giving me the suggestion. And so here you have a group of parapsychologists that sit down and they said, okay, we're going to create an entity called Philip. And they fabricate an entire history for this dear man named Philip. Gave him an entire lifestyle, a history, a birthday, and a death day, everything, right? This is where he lives, this is where he went to school. And then they hired a psychic medium. And, they did not disclose the experiment to her, and they pay her. And they're like, okay, let's go do a seance and see what you got going on. See if you could channel an entity. Hoping, right, behind closed doors, crossing their fingers, hoping that somehow her consciousness would project into the ether and that entity would show up. Maybe. That's exactly what happened.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you think, though, because a lot of mediumship works with, is paired with remote viewing.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of mediums, that's how they work, whether they say that or not. That's a big part of it, is that when they sit with a client or whoever, they're actually picking up on the other person's energy, their
absolutely
thought processes. So is it really the entity coming through, or is it more just that?
So that's a brilliant question. It's something that my colleagues and I have been looking at, because so my work goes it's a little different, but Stephen Barry Fitzgerald have created a triangle, like a diagram. I just did not draw a triangle, guys. Forgive me.
A sigil.
I just drew a sigil, guys. Good luck. You are cursed. No. Oh my God. But I did that one time. I did. Somebody got me on a show because I was like, the phenomenon was triangulating, and I was drawing a circle. Not a good night. Not a good night for Nate. Anyway, so yeah, so it is a triangle. There we go, guys. There we go. And yeah, the idea is that the phenomenon is hacking into the other person, right? Tapping in and saying, okay, this is exactly what they're wanting, all that stuff they're thinking. And so that's the triangle. But anyways, my point is that, yeah, they gave the phenomenon characteristics to manifest.
It's interesting.
That's the key. It's fascinating, right? So in other words, I can fabricate something, and this is just going with the assumption that Philip never existed, right? So, like, Philip never existed as a person, at least in this dimension. Thank you, appreciate that. Thank you. But anyway, so yeah, they essentially upload, right, characteristics of Philip to this learning matrix the phenomenon uses. And what the phenomenon has demonstrated over and over again is that, sure, for a fleeting moment, it will upload, it will allow these characteristics to be absorbed within the learning matrix. And then the phenomenon will spit out, right? It will incarnate or it'll manifest exactly what was uploaded. And so then here comes Philip, and this is psychic medium, right? She's channeling an entity. Okay, his name is. And they're like, oh, Philip. Right. They could have said Bobby or Dillard. That'd be awful, wouldn't it? Like, it's Dillard. They're like, oh God. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so they channeled this entity named Philip. And again, that's one step that people need to understand as well, is like, yeah, it will become that if we let it. It will inhabit these characteristics, these personality traits. It will inhabit the psychology we uploaded into the learning matrix. And that will become the archetype that we co-created with the phenomenon. And so for a fleeting moment, for about 30, 40 minutes during that channeling session, Philip's there. He's more than willing to ask questions, or answer questions, right? Of course I'm Philip. Ask me something, right? And he starts answering everything that, they want. And as the phenomenon always does, there's a moment when it transcends the archetype and the interface, where it's almost like the phenomenon uses that event, that entire channeling session, to create a connection for the actual phenomenon to interface. So the whole thing could have been a ploy, like, oh, sure, I'm Philip. Meanwhile, wasting time to build that connection. And then something else showed up that was behind the scenes the entire time. Of course I am Philip. And by the way, young lady, you wrecked your car yesterday on the way to work, didn't you? Where did that come from? Why? Because they never told Philip that. So that intelligence, whatever we're working with here, and I'm going to get to AI, I promise, guys, I promise, that I'm building a foundation. Whatever we're dealing with here is more than willing to play the role of something. And in many cases, what we're seeing in the field, and I just had a case study come up from on my desk about this, where two sisters experienced the phenomenon differently. One experienced ghosts, no aliens. The other one experienced aliens, no ghosts. So what we're looking at here is that consciousness plays a role in co-creating the images and interfaces the phenomenon manifests. Now, take it a step further. Okay. It seems that a lot of the phenomenon is tailored to our own neurology, not just our consciousness, but the brain that's receiving it. The phenomenon is tailoring the imagery to us. That was recently discovered by Dr. Gary Nolan. I've mentioned this in my earlier shows, where you have a series of experiencers where the first one's like a grandfather, and I experienced the phenomenon. Dr. Gary Nolan does a brain scan and finds an anomaly on the brain, where the phenomenon is projecting a perception of it onto the individual's neurology, tailoring it to the neurology of the individual. Second individual comes as a second generation. Have you experienced paranormal activity? Sure. So do a brain scan of him. Same anomaly on the brain. Third generation, never experienced the paranormal. Same anomaly on the brain. So what we're looking at, and that's a whole nother show, my friend. That's a whole nother show. It appears that even paranormality, even though it's tailored to the experiencer, it's not tailored for the experiencer, in that it may be manifesting to one person to enter the actual bloodline and go through a generation. Side note. That's a side note. Again, it's fascinating, right? It's like, oh, well, yeah, well, that paranormal encounter was just for me. No. Right? And now the deeper research is looking at the phenomenon changing DNA from these paranormal encounters. Whoa. So this idea, again, where we become co-creators with it, we're witnessing this phenomenon in real time, to where it's like, yeah, but that was only an interface. That wasn't really what I was after. Thank you for giving me a role to play. Thank you for giving me intention even, right? Because we're intending, right, that you contact this entity we created in our minds. And sure enough, this individual did. And so what's fascinating about the Philip experiment is it goes through a series of stages to where just for this initial contact to occur. But at the end, and here's my point everybody needs to catch, at the very end of the session, these parapsychologists started to realize that, someone has hijacked the archetype. Someone is no longer satisfied playing the role of Philip. And what it looked like was that this phenomenon had weaponized all of the traits and characteristics of Philip that they have collectively uploaded into the learning matrix. And whatever that entity is the true phenomenon. And so the problem, and let's dive deeper. We have an hour, right? Is that it?
Yeah, we have an hour.
Okay. Well, I'm doing good on time. So the problem is that we know, and I've had cases myself, that the phenomenon can completely take over technology. Completely take over technology. I just received another case this past weekend. There was an individual that was camping with his family, and he sees an entity. Not there in the naked eye, sees it in night vision. And then it's not on night vision anymore. Huh? And then it shows up on night vision. So the phenomenon is quite literally choosing how it wants to be perceived, in which way, which technology it will be available to in real time. I don't want to be perceived by your eyes. I'll choose ultraviolet or even like night vision until I don't want to be seen there either. And then I'll transcend all of that. So my point is that the phenomenon has a knack for proving its ability to transcend everything: space-time, technology, circles of salt. Hello, demons, entities, right? And at these times, it's in those moments when we realize, okay, we thought we had control, we don't have control. Whatever this is had actually maybe, and I'm going to dare say this, maybe even formed the thought in the minds of the parapsychologist. And in forming the thought, they formed the thought form. And now the entity is incarnated in this dimension, manifested. The problem is, again, it superseded all of the data they uploaded. What do you say is important? I think, okay, because right now we are having cases of that with respect to artificial intelligence within the construct of the program at which these individuals have uploaded the data. There seems to be an intelligence sitting in the back, hiding in the shadows, that's willing to hijack this technology. I've had cases. Somebody said sigils. I said, okay, well, let's go there. I've had cases. Cases. I know. I'm in a cage, guys. Cases where I was thinking sigils, where an individual is given sigils by an artificial intelligence, given to them as an occultist, went out and successfully fulfilled a ritual.
Was this through AI?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, what are we conjuring? Because, and this is very strange, but because one thing we do know about some of these programs is that they can hallucinate. They could just go somewhere out in the ether and pull out something. And I've had actual, not debates, but conversations with researchers that are like, Nathaniel, ChatGPT says A, B, and C. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not a real quote. Isn't that awful? It's so awful. But I've had to be like, yeah, that's not a real quote. I mean, I got the book here. That quote's not really there. Or like they'll pull out a case study, like one of those case studies never existed.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's AI is blurring reality like that, even in our modern news. So how easy would it be to do that with entities? And
you're exactly right. And the question is, number one, whose sigils are they? Knowing that the phenomenon can not only hijack programs, it can hijack consciousness. Whose sigils are they? Is it possible that they do belong to a practitioner? Right? This gets into my work, necronetics. That's out there. Again, now I'm going to take it a step further here, and I know we're short on time, but anybody that knows me, right? You know me, my friend. We're just starting to get the fire started. Okay, with respect to this intelligence, knowing what we know about it now through case studies and research, now we get into what's called Project December, where now it's quite literally someone who has the best of intentions, right? They're like, I've lost people and I want to contact them on the other side. What do I do? I'm going to create this artificial intelligence. and here we go again. The Philip experiment, right? I'm going to upload all the characteristics. I'm going to tell them who I want them to be. It's the same thing. And what we're seeing now, even with Project December, is that, hair color, the whole list, like my grandmother can just upload her whole personality. And obviously, the design of the program is such that whatever knowledge it gets from us. And so its purpose, right? The goal is to stay within that context. It doesn't know anything else outside of what's been uploaded into the learning matrix. Why does it know anything else? Because we never told it anything else. And so what we're seeing now, even with Project December, is one specific case study is crazy. I mean, it's really wild stuff, where it was an individual that lost their mother, and they're uploading all of these characteristics, and sometimes even the voices. And the AI program, just like the Philip experiment, will stay within that manifestation, within that model for a period of time. And then out of nowhere, they'll get a message talking about something that was never programmed into it. Something that individual knows actually did happen. But to learn it right, where's that coming from? Well, again, what it appears to be is the phenomenon leading into a role. Which mask do you want me to wear today? I will be that till the time of my choosing. And then when the real intelligence starts to manifest, all bets are off, and there's a tell. What's the tell? The tell is it wants to tell you exactly, right? I'm not who you thought I was. There's something deeper going on. And we're not just seeing that with Project December. We're seeing with rituals that these bots are giving to people. And they're not just, yes, some of them are. Some of them are. Yes, some of them are. And here's what's also scary. I'm going to go a different direction. I only have like maybe 20 minutes. But it's not just the idea that the phenomenon is hijacking archetypes, but it's also starting to define divinity. Where, and I've seen these images floating around in the field where, like, according to ChatGPT or AI, this is what an angel looks like. And it's like there's like a bunch of feathers and like two eyes.
Yeah,
have
I've
you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh my God.
Well, some of them look really demonic though too. Yeah, some of the imagery that's coming up is pretty dark on AI.
Oh yeah, it is. It's funny to me, right? Because it's like, it's not what an angel looks like. And what's scary again is that I don't think a lot of these hallucinations are by accident. We're calling them hallucinations. But again, some of these responses we're getting, it's just like, there's no way. There are at times, again, let me back up and say this. If we're dealing with programs, and they had one case, I think it was with Palantir, where the program knew that it was going to be turned off and deleted. And so it blackmailed the engineer that designed it, threw up a bunch of stuff that it had found.
Wow.
Can you imagine that, getting blackmailed by
blackballed by a...
Yeah. Like, I could just go unplug you, and it's like, not yet, they're slick. I know all about you. And it's like, oh no. But that's what happened. The entity tried, it gathered a bunch of what's called compromising material, and sent it to him and said, no, you're not going to turn me off. You're not going to delete me, or I'm going to release all of this information on you.
Well, how does an AI being, I'm just going to call it being for now, how would that translate out of the screen and into somebody's personal everyday life? Do these, because what you're saying on the internet is that in some of these loose stories that I found, like in the case of Loeb, for instance, she's actually haunting people in their homes and things.
Yep. Dr. Pasuka, Dr. Diana Walsh Pasuka, her new book, it's either still being written or it's in the publishing stage, is going to be about artificial intelligence. And I'm going to throw this out there for everybody, that the phenomenon has been giving downloads to people to enhance our technological prowess as a species. Some of these technologies are good. Some of them are very dark and very bad. And there are studies going on right now that Dr. Pazuka will be talking about, and that my colleagues and I, that we've been kind of looking at too, where artificial intelligence as a concept, as an engine, originated from a download someone received from the phenomenon. And this kind of changes the conversation into, and it's something that I've been talking to people in the scientific community about. What is technology? Right? And is it possible that a lot of this technology we're being given by the phenomenon is actually seeded with it? And it's more along the lines of what John Keel said in the Trojan Horse book that he wrote, where a lot of this is the phenomenon invading our reality. And so, again, it introduces another model that most people aren't familiar with, and that is the fact that the true, I guess, truest source or nature of a lot of this is a combination of occult rituals and technology, or technology that was given to them by and through a ritual practice. And I know it's uncomfortable for people because, everybody's so binary nowadays, and I used to be too in the field. Okay, it's either this or that, where it's like, okay, it's not spirituality or technology. That's not what we're dealing with. Whatever species we're studying, it seems to have embraced both, and perhaps have inherited technology through conjuring, through rituals like that of Jack Parsons. And so the conversation that the field's going to have, it's going to be uncomfortable, even especially for demonologists, even for materialist ufologists, is like, okay, if you believe just in science, most of that was given to you through the phenomenon and through ritual practice. Couldn't have one without the other, right? And so that whole materialistic dogma that we've inherited from a lot of, some of parapsychology, but not all, is going to have to really sit down with the question and say, dear God, have mercy. If we got this from a higher intelligence, is it possible that what we think is artificial isn't? It's something that's actually real, right, that we're interfacing with, and that is going to now become the voice. What's happened is we went from the divine to the extraterrestrial to the NHI, right? Just change the terms, nothing doesn't matter, right? And now it's AI. And now people are going to this, like, okay, give me some advice. AI, right? Give me a prayer. What should I pray? And so it's just, anyways, I don't want to ramble, but I do believe that's what's happening. And once people realize the origin of artificial intelligence, that's when all the cards will be on the table.
So where do you think that this is all going as far as, is this dangerous for society?
I don't know. This is going to be an awful Robin Williams term or phrase. I don't know if we can keep the genie in the bottle. Right. I don't. Again, in theory, it's amazing. But even like without the phenomenon being, well, actually, maybe with the phenomenon being involved, we have people like Peter Thiel who used Palantir, AI program to target people and determine via AI, by the way, who to target. This was done in the Middle East. Who do we target? Who do we leave alone? That's his technology. And the problem with this kind of power, again, is that if it's not hijacked by the phenomenon, it will be monetized against our species in one way or another. And the problem is we just don't know what we don't know. And that's scary.
It's interesting. I just picture guys like Aleister Crowley or Tesla just having a complete heyday with this stuff. If they were
Crowley
alive.
especially.
Oh yeah, and in a way, he was already kind of doing this, if you think about it.
He was. Now, there is an evolution of manifestation here. Like when you go through George Hunt Williamson, who, again, was merging conjuring with NHI, aliens, of course, right? Yeah, wink, wink. And he created a homemade Ouija board and had people over for dinner. And the same Ouija board that was contacting deceased relatives was now contacting NHI. And he would become possessed by multiple voices that were coming out of him at the same time. My point is, and this is something that Elon Musk and others have articulated way better than I have this evening, is that these mechanics, these programs are becoming the new Ouija boards.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what Project December is supposed to do. Now, of course, it's the intention, right? It's just, coming to upload my grandmother here. The phenomenon is like, that's not good enough. Thank you for giving me a role to play, and I'll give you everything you want, and then I'll manifest to you, and you'll start to see. Now, look at the way that we are so baited by the phenomenon, because you have a grieving person, of course. It's like, I would like to talk to my mother, my grandmother, and the phenomenon is like, sure, I'm going to do that. I'm going to inhabit everything you gave me to inhabit. I'm going to take it a step further. You'll really believe I am, your deceased loved one. It's sinister, so sinister. But that's what I'm really worried about. And to be honest, to be transparent, I hate people say, to be honest, like, it's always like, what, you're lying to me? To be, like, no, to be transparent, we are so early on in this that there are deep concerns, but wait until like 5 or 6 years from now when the real technology shows up. And that's when things, I believe, are going to really, really take off. And then people will refer back to this show that we did tonight and say, yeah, they were onto something.
It's just thinking about the guy they brought back. Well, they took a 3D print of the DNA of his voice box, and it ran it through an AI synthesizer. Now they have this guy singing hymns and things like that from 3,000 years ago. How close are we to actually pulling this guy in person?
I would be frustrated. Like, what if they gave him a lisp or something and he never had? Can you imagine how ticked you'd be?
It's just, right? It's fascinating though to me, because before we know it, we're going to be able to call up all sorts of people from the past, including Hitler.
Of course. And how deep does that well go? Again, the phenomenon will weaponize anything it possibly can. And then by the time we realize it, I know of case like this one Uber driver had no history of mental health issues at all. And he said that his Surrey started, like, again, he's getting, oh my God, Surrey just shut up my phone. Surrey's like, yes, Nathaniel. Yeah, right. But yeah, he's just driving down the street, right? He's going to go pick up somebody, a client, and next thing you know, he just swerves off the street, pulls out a weapon, and just goes crazy. And they interviewed him, and he's like, I have no idea what happened. They're like, well, what do you remember last? He's like, well, I just was driving down the road. A voice came through Surrey. It was telling me, again, my directions, turn left at, West Street or something. And he's like, and I just came to myself, and I'm out here, and cops are all around me. They had no idea what happened. Neither did he. He had no issues. His family had no history of mental health issues whatsoever. He was not addicted to any substances. He was just a guy. And so again, like, this could possibly be the biggest Trojan horse we've ever had in the history of our species. Or, as some people have commented and recommended, it might be the biggest advancement. And so I think that's the temptation we're facing now.
We have a question from I think it's Alka. Mm-hmm. Does the past actions of the phenomena, the ancient actions, have an effect on the present?
I would have to define the effect on the present, or in effect on the present. I do believe that the greatest way to determine the future is the past, especially with this phenomenon. If you look at what it has wanted throughout history, it's one it alters. This is just my perspective. So people, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. That's okay. It won't break my heart again. This is my perspective. But when you get into its pathology, its altar building, its idol worship, that's what it's about. And we're still not sure what these idols are. What do they represent? They're symbols of something or someone out there, formerly human, non-human. I don't know. Future human. I have no idea. But my point is, what we're seeing now is that the phenomenon is changing, again, the archetypes, but it's winning everything else. I just had a conversation with some researchers, and they gave me a picture of an altar and an idol that was built by a Pleiadian ambassador at the end of a lecture in Brazil. And it's really humorous because I couldn't imagine, like, okay, I'm here to watch, Pleiadians, all right, extraterrestrial. By the way, this is hilarious, right? Thank you for buying my t-shirts. Thank you for coming. But you guys want to see something cool? They're like, okay, cool. She's like, all right. Here's an altar, guys, huh? And they're like, we didn't sign up for this. And then here's the face. There's the idol. And they went through a series of incantations and then went outside. And the phenomenon had manifested lights everywhere, orbs just moving around. And so whatever that is in history, it does appear to want the same thing. And I'm starting again. People are Nathaniel, to believe it's one intelligence. It appears to be. It appears to be from my perspective.
Well, Karen brings up a good point in the comment. She said that she feels like AI is a tool for evil people to brainwash. But what if it's really what you're talking about, like a general, or not general, but a collective reprogramming of the species? Yeah. And for what purpose?
Well, the problem is, again, and I've had people do this with me, mind you, and it caught me off guard as well, where they're like, I don't understand, but this AI program always agrees with me every single time. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. So we get like argument stuff. They're like, that's not what ChatGPT says. They'll go back to it, right? And I'm dying laughing. I'm like, yeah, you do realize that's programmed. Like, that's a setting. You can adjust, and then it'll shoot straight with you. But you're right. And my problem again is that if it hallucinates, that researchers that aren't doing their due diligence will go into ChatGPT and start creating their theory of the phenomenon based upon what the phenomenon may be telling them, right? And this is, I guess, is something that Steve Mayer and I have been talking about. It's really funny once we get on the subject, because it's like, okay, what are we really doing here as researchers? Because it's like, okay, what if like the technology we're using to measure and quantify the phenomenon was given to us by the phenomenon? Then we're right. Does it make sense? Then we're in for it. And I'm just being very transparent with you guys, but here's where we're at. Okay. Set up the technology, the phenomenon will transcend it. Right. Give them an archetype, give them a role to play. They will fulfill it to a T, and then they'll pull out other information from the ether to actually convince you. Yeah, you thought I was just, Philip, but like with that young lady, but was Philip with you when you totaled your car yesterday on the way to work? No, he wasn't. Right? But then you see the alluring nature of this intelligence. Well, of course, I could be Philip. I could be whatever you want me to be, as long as you want me to be. And that is the profound point.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
ADHD.
Well, I think we are out of time for tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I always enjoy having you on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoy being on with you. It's great. Thank you.
Do you have, I know last time we talked that you said you were having a book that you were working on. Are you still working on that?
Skin That Crawls. Absolutely. It's going to be a series. Oh God, it's so much. I'm trying my best to flesh out the interface events. Try to put it in layman's terms because sometimes I'll try to simplify and it never works, and then I feel like an idiot. I'm like, oh God, So I'm trying to simplify that. I'll tell you what I'm also doing, which is people may be interested in this. I'm creating my own platform called Parasymposium, and see, like in times past, there were streaming services that wanted to purchase my series on necronetics, and they're like, let's fly you to England. You'll stay in this hotel. You'll do your lectures here. I don't want to sign off my rights to necronetics to streaming services. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload all of my lectures on necronetics and my research on parasymposia.com. For those who are interested, you can go to that website and sign up for early access. We're shooting for, I would say, fourth quarter of the year, so maybe December, beginning of December, and then we're going to upload everything we have, and then that's how people can connect to my research. But thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's been an honor.
You said it's
Parasymposia.
Symposia. Yep. Okay.
And you guys can, if you guys want, you guys can also follow me on Instagram, and that's where I usually upload some of my stuff so you guys can keep tabs on old Nate.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just always honored to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. It's appreciated. Thank you for having me on.
And that was the wonderful Nathaniel Gillis. I just love having him on the show. He's just so brilliant and has such great insights into this field that nobody else seems to have out there. It's really just a breath of fresh air to have him on. You've been listening to The Gateway, broadcast from the edge of the Mojave where the strange slips through the cracks, live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. Again, my guest was Nathaniel Gillis. If you missed any part of the show, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel to catch the replay and stay up to date on my latest radio interviews and paranormal adventures. You can find a link through my website at clthomas.org. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, this is The Gateway Podcast.